Hello everyone and welcome to the next session of ArthaPoint CUET MA English Preparation. Today in this session, we would be discussing a very important age in the history of English that changed the course of Old English and that provided a movement towards what we know today as English. So today we would be discussing about the medieval English literature. Now, what is the medieval English literature? What is the history of the medieval age? A date that is extremely of significance when we talk of the medieval English literature is 1066 AD. Now, why 1066 AD is of importance? Because as discussed in the earlier video, English began with what we know as Old English, a period of Anglo-Saxons. Right. Now, this 1066 AD is a crucial moment because this broke the Old English into two parts. One was the era of the Anglo-Saxons, and post 1066 AD is the era of Anglo-Normans. Now, who are these Anglo-Normans? Who are the Normans? What is the history? So, let us understand who these Norman people were. So, as I told you, that the whole date is 14th October 1066. That is of importance. Now, these Norman people were essentially called the Vikings. These Vikings were extremely good fighters, right? And the king of the Normans was William the Bastard, as he was known then. Now, these Vikings were extremely good fighters and they were on a complete outlook to capture more and more land, right? Now, these Vikings wanted to capture England. However, before coming to England, these Vikings went to capture France. Now, before fighting, the then King of France decided to offer them a peace treaty, and what the king did at that time was he offered them the north part of France. Right. Now, this north part of France was then called as Normandy. Therefore, these Vikings came to be known as the Normans. Now, one thing important to know about these Norman or the Viking people was the fact that these people completely adopted the French culture. Right. They left their culture behind. They adopted the French culture. They married French females and they accepted Christianity. Right. So they left their own culture behind and they accepted Christianity as a whole. So William the Bastard, who later gave himself the name William the Conqueror, right? He decided to conquer England. And on this very fine day, 14th October 1066 AD, he, along with his 7,000 men, marched towards England and eventually he took over England. Now, another thing to note about this very fact is that they marched towards Wessex. So we already know from the Old English segment that the Anglo-Saxon period was divided into three parts. That were the Angles, the Saxons, and the Wessex. And the Wessex people were of the highest, right? So he marched towards Wessex. He defeated the king of Wessex and eventually conquered England, right? So basically, France took over England. Let us discuss the same thing. So 1066 AD, the Anglo-Saxon period remained for about 500 years. This was the before Chaucer era, because the next era would be that of Chaucer, right? So Norman conquest we have already discussed. They adopted French as their language and embraced Christianity. So they became known for their learning, their military prowess, and their organizing ability. I've already told you that these people were extremely good fighters. They learned more and more about Christianity. Right. Now, this is again a very important statement. That feudal system was established in the English society. Now, what is a feudal system? That the king plus church, they are at the top of the hill, and whatever they say would be accepted. Anybody disobeying the order of the church or of the king was hanged to death on the spot. Right. So a feudal system was set up in the English society. Right. Let us move on. Okay. Now, one thing to know about the Norman conquest was, now English was divided, as I have already told you. Now English was divided into two parts. One was Anglo-Saxon and the other one was Anglo-French. All the clergymen, all the aristocrats in the society now spoke French. All the texts were present in the language of French, while the lower class, the common man, they still continued speaking the language of the Anglo-Saxon era. Therefore, the new language was called the Anglo-French language, right? So therefore, the name of this era is the medieval English history, the medieval English era, because a middle ground was established. One thing more to know about this era is the fact that whatever text was produced in this period, none of it was to do anything with the common man, right? Now, let us look at the text written. So, customs and idols, yes. So, again, one more important thing that the Normans brought to the Anglo-Saxon society was the concept of chivalry, the concept of romance, the concept of Christianity. Till 400 BC somewhat, sorry, till 400 AD, 400, 500 AD, paganism was dominant in the society, right? Now Christianity took over completely. The complete love for Virgin Mary, and they established their heroes as romantic heroes. Though they were chivalrous, they were extremely different from the society, right? So Anglo-Saxons sank to a position of abjectness, as I told you, because a feudal system was set up. Anglo-Saxons were dropped to the lowest level, right? Their language was made a despised thing. French was of warfare and chivalry, art and luxury, science, law began to come into their language. So a lot of French words were established. For example, mansion was one such word. Nobody knew what mansion was till now. But as the Anglo-French people came, as the French Normans came, they brought a lot of words, a new diction altogether. Right. So now three languages existed in England. One was English, one was French, and the third one was Latin. The Normans spoke French, the lower class spoke English, and the scholars and clergymen spoke French. Sorry, the scholars and clergymen used Latin. Now, this concept of Latin in the Anglo-Norman era brings us to a very crucial point in the history of medieval English, that is the Crusades. Now, what is the whole concept of Crusades? Let us quickly look at it. Now, what happened was that since church was at the highest, church was considered the highest in the society, and the order of Pope was accepted. Pope ordered all the Christians in the West to come together, go to the East, and convert more and more people into Christianity. So Crusades was a religious war. And the Christians that took part in it were called Crusaders, right? Till then, East was dominant Muslim place. So more and more Christians went to the East to convert them into Christianity. Now, when these Crusaders came back from the East, they brought a lot of Latin text, a lot of whatever they could fetch. They brought all the books, all the knowledge, all the text back to their place. With this text coming in, all the people, because till now the text that was produced was in French language. The whatever education that was imparted by the clergymen. But with this accessibility of the Latin text, more and more people could read it. They understood the classical text. And slowly and steadily, what happened was that education was at peak now. Everybody had accessibility to these texts, right? So people were learning, people were teaching. The learned men were forming their own guilds. These guilds were formed, and what were these guilds doing? They decided on how they would impart education. They set up their own rules and they started imparting education, right? Local colleges were set. And a very interesting point here is that Oxford and Cambridge, the now well-known universities, had their foundation in the Anglo-Norman period, right? Another thing to know about is that London became the hub of education. So in case, if you get a chance to visit London, you would see that a lot of learned men from that era were in London, right? So what happened with Crusaders coming in was a cross fertilization of knowledge. Right? Let us move on. Now let us look at the romance in the Anglo-Norman period. So romance was dominant. It was a genre that was brought by the French people, and this was extremely dominant in the Anglo-Norman period. So it was a literary form in the medieval period that we know. You can also get a question in your CUET examination asking you, in which period was romance established in the history of English literature? So you must know that it was established in the medieval period. It was a long composition, sometimes in verse, sometimes in prose, which described the adventure of a noble hero. Now, this is of extreme importance. A noble hero. Who was this noble hero? We would discuss the characteristics that were predominant in this period. Now, this noble hero was someone who was not a common man. He was a person that was put on a pedestal. He had no general resemblance to truth or reality. So it was a complete farce, and therefore the common people could never associate to this character, and therefore they were more interested in the classical texts that were brought from the East. Now, it exaggerated the vices of human nature and idealizes the virtues. It contains perilous adventures, more or less remote from the ordinary. So, of course, this noble hero was, so for example, like in our Bollywood movies, even if there are 100 people fighting against one hero, this one hero would still win, right? So, this was the case. A common person could never associate with such a hero. Now, another important thing was their extreme belief in Christianity, because it laid supreme devotion to the fair lady. And the central character of romance is a knight, a man of noble birth. We have already discussed the social structure. Right now, just one thing that is of importance apart from the Crusades and the Norman War is that in the year 1381, the peasants started uprising because there was an intervention of the classical text. People now understood the corruption of the church because there was a lot of bloodshed happening. People were dying because of these wars. And of course, the taxes were, high taxes were being imposed on the common people. And it was slowly and steadily, people were becoming more and more aware of the corruption of the church and the poor. Therefore, a small peasant uprising began by Wat Tyler and John Ball. However, it failed, but then this was a beginning, right? We have already discussed crusades. Also, this crusades is something that in the coming times, this was just a beginning, right? And in somewhere in the 15th century, we would see Renaissance uprising, right? So crusades was a foundation because of the crusades, there was a lot of classical text that came back into being, right? So we have already discussed the new society and the English language. Now, just one last thing of importance in this medieval age is the Romance cycle. So Romance cycle, or the texts that were produced in general, were divided into three parts: the matter of Britain, the matter of France, and the matter of Rome. What are these cycles? So this means that the main text that was being produced in this era, these texts were taken from these three, or they were highly influenced by these three matters. What was the matter of Britain? So the matter of Britain dealt with King Arthur and his knights, right? So this one of the most important texts that we have here is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. The next is the Matter of France. So the Matter of France deals largely with the exploits of Charlemagne. He was known as Charles the Great. So and one of the most important texts that we have in this period is La Chanson de Roland. Next, we have the Matter of Rome. The Matter of Rome, it deals with the tales of Greek and Roman sources. For example, one of the source was Alexander the Great, king of Macedonia and conqueror of Greece, Egypt, India, and the Persian Empire. Right? So it also dealt with the Trojan War. Right? So these were the three main sources from where the text was being produced. Right? So with this, we come to an end to the medieval period. So we will be discussing the main texts that were present in the medieval period in the next video. Till then, take care. I would ask you all to give these texts a thorough read so that you can understand what we have discussed. You can understand about this noble character. You can understand about the romance cycle. With this, we end the session. Thank you for watching. I will be back with the next video. Till then, take care.